11th of February, here are our top stories. India and China agree to pull troops back from a tense and disputed border region. The head of the Tokyo Olympics reportedly set to resign over sexist remarks. The Holiday Inn Hotel COVID cluster in Melbourne continues to grow. And chilling new details emerge about the US Capitol riots. You're watching The World. Hello there, I'm Yvonne Yong. Also tonight we look at the creative methods that protesters in Myanmar are using to make their voices heard. But first, India and China have today reached an agreement to pull back troops from a heavily fortified stretch of disputed border. Tensions between the two Asian powers have remained high after a fatal brawl at the Galwan Valley last year when an unknown number of Chinese soldiers and 20 Indian troops were killed. Now soldiers at another disputed area, Pangong Lake, will pull back to positions occupied before April last year, and military structures in a buffer zone will also be dismantled. India's Defence Minister confirmed the news to Parliament after Beijing announced an agreement was finalised.
The agreement that we have been able to reach with the Chinese side for disengagement in the Pangong Lake area envisages that both sides will cease their forward deployments in a phased, coordinated and verified manner. These are mutual and reciprocal steps, and any structures that have been built by both sides since April 2020 in both North and South Bank areas will be removed and landforms will be restored.
And we'll have more on this story. I'll be crossing live to our South Asia correspondent James Ocean a little later. Now, Japanese media are reporting that the president of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics Organising Committee, Yoshiro Mori, is set to resign. The former Japanese Prime Minister has drawn immense criticism after making sexist remarks, saying women are annoying and talk too much. He retracted the comments and now says they were inappropriate, but has not been able to quell the backlash. Mr. Mori says he'll explain himself in a press conference tomorrow. An outbreak linked to a Melbourne quarantine hotel has grown to 11 cases. A fourth hotel worker and the husbands of 2 staff members have tested positive today. All of them have the more infectious UK strain of COVID-19. Here's state political reporter Bridget Rollison.
As the cluster increased, so too did queues at testing clinics in Melbourne's west. 3 more people have now tested positive, but authorities say there's no need to panic.
They were already isolating as primary close contacts of their partners, and as such, we have, at this point, no significant concern.
11 people have now been infected in the outbreak that began at a Melbourne airport quarantine hotel. A family of 3 tested positive to the UK variant while quarantining in the Holiday Inn. One of them used a nebuliser, which is believed to have expelled virus particles into the corridor. On Sunday, an authorised officer working at the hotel tested positive. 2 guests who left the hotel on Sunday later returned a positive result. A food and beverage worker at the hotel developed symptoms on Saturday but didn't test positive until Monday. Yesterday, another food and beverage worker also tested positive. And today, an assistant manager caught the virus, and 2 other new cases are the spouses of hotel workers.
We're alert but not alarmed. I mean, we are right on top of this one.
I'm absolutely confident it was a single event, that hazard has been removed. Now it's about making sure that anyone that might be in the community who is positive is found and isolated.
But some experts worry authorities are still not giving enough attention to airborne transmission.
This has to be checked very carefully and to ensure that air cannot escape from the rooms of infected people.
Despite repeated leaks, the Prime Minister insists there's no need for an overhaul.
The hotel quarantine program has seen some 211,000 people come through it, and we're talking about a handful of cases. I mean, this is a system the rest of the world wants to replicate.
But refused to say which state has the gold standard.
I don't have a favourite. in any of this. I'm not looking to score them. I'm just looking to support them.
It's support Victoria can only benefit from. Bridget Rollison, ABC News, Melbourne.
Well, as a result of the new cases, Queenslanders are being urged to rethink their travel to Victoria. While authorities say it's too early to declare Melbourne a hotspot, they're bringing back border declarations for anyone travelling from Victoria. As of 1 a.m. Saturday, anyone who's been there since January the 29th will need to apply for a pass before entering Queensland. Queensland's Deputy Premier says it'll allow authorities to check if travellers have been to any of the exposure sites in Melbourne.
And also keep a record of people coming to Queensland from areas that may, down the track, need to be declared a hotspot so that we can contact them. It just means we're a little bit less reliant on getting information, particularly from airlines.
One new COVID-19 case has been recorded in Queensland, a returned traveller in hotel quarantine. Anti-coup protests are growing in Myanmar as at least 5 more of Aung San Suu Kyi's aides and officials are reportedly detained. Dozens of police have now defected, a day after a young woman was shot in the head. Southeast Asia correspondent Zoe Ford reports.
As Maya Thwei Kwang fights for her life in hospital, protesters are continuing their fight in her name. The 19-year-old grocery store worker has become the face of Myanmar's growing resistance movement. The teenager can be seen here in red after police fired a live bullet during an anti-coup demonstration in the capital Naypyidaw. Her heartbroken sister beside her as she goes down.
At first I thought they were shooting into the sky, so I told my sister to go back. I didn't think that she'd got shot. I thought she'd just fainted.
Anger is growing right across Myanmar following last week's military coup and the arrest of elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi. While police in most cities are using force to disperse demonstrations, officers in one state crossed the line to join them. Going back to the troop is not what we want, this young policeman confronts his superior. His fellow officers shout back in agreement. The civil disobedience movement is expanding, from engineers in Yangon to monks in Mandalay. The United States is mounting pressure on Myanmar's generals. The president says a new executive order will sanction military leaders, their business interests and family members, preventing them from accessing more than $1 billion worth of government funds held in the US. Strong export controls will also be imposed. But Joe Biden assured that support for Myanmar's civilians will continue.
We will use our renewed engagement on the Human Rights Council to strengthen the world's commitment to human rights in Burma.
He's trying to punish the generals, but the people of Myanmar want them gone altogether, for the sake of a young generation which fears a future under military rule. Zoe Ford, ABC News.
Chilling new pictures from inside the US Capitol show just how close the angry mob came to getting their hands on legislators. Democrats have taken the impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump through lengthy arguments on why he should be held responsible for the violence on that day, accusing him of a concerted campaign to undermine US democracy. From Washington, Matthew Doran reports.
As Trump supporters turned on the president's right-hand man, the Secret Service sprung into action.
Oh, Mike Pence, we're coming for you too!
Previously unseen security camera vision shows Mike Pence being bundled out of the Senate chamber.
As Pence was being evacuated, rioters started to spread throughout the Capitol.
Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman has been praised for his heroics on January 6th, leading the rampaging mob away from elected representatives. New details today showing how close a call it was.
Officer Goodman passes Senator Mitt Romney and directs him to turn around in order to get to safety.
Nancy! Oh, Nancy!
Nancy Pelosi, a prime target, was spirited away to relative safety.
We know from the rioters themselves that if they had found Speaker Pelosi, they would have killed her.
The Speaker's staff barricading themselves in, hiding under a table as armed rioters arrive just 7 minutes later. The Democrats spent the day setting the scene for this new vision, arguing Donald Trump's rally ahead of the riot was the final act in months of calculated rhetoric aimed at whipping his supporters into a frenzy.
Donald Trump surrendered his role as commander-in-chief and became the inciter-in-chief.
Regardless of the Democrats' extensive and detailed arguments to the Senate, it's still unlikely they'll convince enough Republicans to vote to convict Donald Trump. Most are keen to avoid publicly criticising the former president and are also fearful of retaliation at the ballot box. The case for the defence will be presented in the next few days, after a meandering performance by the Trump team yesterday.
Yeah, well, let's just say I hope they're going to do a better job of sticking to the point.
As they defend a president against the seemingly indefensible. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Washington.
Indonesian authorities believe a malfunctioning throttle may be to blame for the Sriwijaya air disaster that killed 62 people. A preliminary report has provided new details about the pilot's struggle to fly the plane before it plunged into the Java Sea last month. But without the cockpit voice recorder, they may never know for sure what caused the crash. Indonesia correspondent Ann Barker reports.
Rafiq Yusuf Aladris treasures the photos he has left of his wife of 23 years, Pancha. He recalls their last conversation as she boarded a plane home to Pontianak. She was nervous about the flight.
The weather in Jakarta wasn't good. The sky was black. She asked me to pray for her.
The mother of four was killed when the Sriwijaya Air Boeing 737 plunged into the sea minutes after takeoff. But it wasn't bad weather that brought the plane down. Investigators found the automatic throttle may have been faulty, causing the pilots to lose control.
The left auto throttle was moving back, but whether it was a malfunction, we still don't know, because both throttles showed abnormality.
A preliminary report shows an imbalance in engine thrust sent the plane into a roll, then a final dive into the sea. The throttle system had supposedly been fixed after playing up on previous flights. Search teams spent weeks hunting for wreckage, but still couldn't find the cockpit voice recorder that might shed further light on what happened.
We urge everyone not to make any assumptions, because the evidence is still lacking.
Rafiq Yusuf Aladris doesn't blame Sriwijaya Air or the pilots. He's accepted his wife is never coming home.
Until now, they've not found my wife's DNA or even a fingerprint. I don't expect to get them.
He just hopes this investigation could stop a similar crash from happening again. Ann Barker, ABC News.
Returning now to the break.